Chilly here with Sirius Dallas Moon. This is Jupiter Hour. And this is Jupiter Night. Jupiter is retrograde, 24 degrees Cancer in the 11th house, Ascendant Midheaven, 19 degrees Virgo and Gemini respectively. Mercury, a planet to conjunct Venus in its retrograde motion, and the Moon is 11 degrees Capricorn. Beta Persei was minima yesterday, so it's going to be minima on the 25th again. Now, I want to talk about something, and something's coming up for me, and I kind of think of a name for it. And the name that came up is Operation Manchego. And Manchego is a type of cheese, but they do have um, a trademark on the breeding type, and the way they treat cattle or the way they breed cattle um, is to do with 12th house. So, and it has to do with the cloning farms. So one of the things that I want for me is to have that be more transparent, and that means that I will cooperate with those who have, okay, no cloning, which is not the not no cloning, not the inbreeding or the breeding that is done by coerced, basically rape of the animal, and that means I do want to go off dairy for like the coffee and stuff, or even goat milk if I get to find milk that is actually um, without those issues involved. And that connects to 2 points I want to talk about. So, one thing, I'm having a frequency thing. There's a weird frequency outside. Okay. Um, they having a frequency thing. I'm gonna change my frequency according to the frequency that I set. Um, Wait a second. Two things I want to talk about. One is Pavel Durov, um, and the other is how to protect your off-grid land. Okay, and this is coming from um, my experience as a mundane astrologer that looks at um, invasion and is broadcasting from Israel that was invaded and has invaded. Um, this is why I started with the cattle thing, because the way cattle is treated is each and every one of our 12 houses, and I'm in the opinion that even removing the rape-based breeding and the terrible living conditions of the cattle is already a big step forward, um, because I can't tell you that, oh, just go vegan. Well, if you don't have a soil that's actually rich, if you're not living a rape-free life, if you don't have, it's going to be very relevant. I'm talking about protecting off-grid land. Um, if you don't have, um, you know, the correct seeds. Okay, I need to give a shout out. Oh, the lady with a beautiful accent, with the Irish accent, as she grows. Need to give a shout out. This important shout out. Um, she grows things in her own land, and she talks about garlic. I don't think I'll say it on the spot. Cookie spy? Cookie? Okay. No, I don't say it on the spot. She talks about garlic from China. So I really owe you a link to her channel, but comment me. Okay, remind me in the comments. Um, and she grows garlic, and she said if people buy garlic, let's say, and the issue is not China, because if people buy garlic from China and they're not in China, so it's not local produce, it goes through shit ton of preservatives, okay? And by the time as somebody even to plant it in the soil will create white mold that lasts for it can last for over a decade. So for me it was like, oh my god, thank you so much. Thank you so much that I know that, because garlic was one of the first things that I grew not for commercial purposes, um, and and I tried to buy them local produce for that reason, but I had no idea of the thing about the white mold and the soil. And again, the issue is not China. The issue is the long distance that they travel, and that affects the preservatives. It is true that we currently have planes that go through the supersonic boom and can be ecosystemic, which means can be zero emission. Um, that would highly improve upon, because within a couple of hours, one could import, okay, things from China. And the issue, and here's the reason why it's not there yet. Remember when I talked about Tesla? Okay, so before the local produce people tell you, you're killing my business. I'm not killing your business. Wait a second. Why don't we have Nikola Tesla's energy? We don't have Nikola Tesla's energy because currently people think that energy is to be used for slavery. The people are going to work night shift, going to work 17 hours, or they're going to be organ traded, or they're going to be sex trafficked. And this is exactly why we run in on oil and gas. Okay, as long as people use energy to enslave, to rape, to dissect organs and harvest them, um, okay, then we're just gonna run on oil. Okay, that's as simple as that. As simple as that. And when it comes to the supersonic boom planes, one of the great launches was during the Jupiter Venus. Where my Jupiter Venus material? Jupiter Venus meeting in um, to find it on the spot right now would be challenging. In Cancer, next to Sirius, is on my moon, and this is where we had we had those types of inventions and some nice flying motorcycles. No, it's nice. It's the air is getting hectic, but the reason we don't have that um, is very simply put. If that would be used to ruin local produce and local business, and to monopolize agriculture into slavery, so we're going to fly our 17, 18-hour, 21-hour flight, having our elderly people having heart attack on the plane, flying with dead bodies. because the technology we have, we just need to have humanity. It's technology. We have solutions for everything. Humanity is missing. Um, so no, me talking about technological solutions is not harming local business. Um, because those technological solutions anyway will not be implemented unless humanity stops using that. And here's the thing: one of the boomings of the Industrial Revolution, and this is before I'm going to move to the topic of Dubrov, and one of the boomings of the Industrial Revolution was because women could work. They could, okay. It's not what the oil companies planned for, but when we talk about what was ecosystemically allowed or supported, is that for women to have the separate land, separate bank account, separate house. By the way, the best relationships are when people having their own houses separately. Anyway, when they're gonna divorce, the children are gonna have to live with that. And in Uganda, there are villages where at 12, the child builds their own cabin, and the community helps them, which makes a lot of sense because this is puberty, and children need the youth need privacy at that time. So it makes sense. Now, when we talk about protecting off-grid, the way we treat, and here's the thing: if you have a plot of land, okay, and you have people that are doing the um, work for housing type of arrangement, and now a lot of people hate it when people say work for housing is slavery. Um, that being said, legally this is true, and forget the law, okay? Praxis, what would prevent invasion? If you got, let's say somebody works on the land, if they inherit their part of the land, and that part is good enough for them to do a homestead, now you got another landowner in it with you, in the think tank of how to protect your land. If they are enslaved, okay, even in the best conditions, somebody can come and say, listen, you harm that landlord, by us you inherit a part of the land. Or you harm that landlord, by us you get this part of the land. And those things are happening. Not only that, you don't have to harm that landlord. You give us information about that landlord. We give you money, you hide that money, with that money you can buy land. Okay? So, what do you do to counter that? Here is what the Finns did. And here is what France is doing. Housing first, independent of ability to work. Believe the patient. Okay, because the crazy stories are telling you what is happening in the world. Okay, people that are tortured, that go through trauma, they have their clairs open, but in a way that is not giving the coherent information to those who are running the extortion codes. But if you give housing first, independent of ability to work, the ability when they want to build up, I don't know, whether it's their homestead, whether it's painting, whether it's, I don't know, whatever they like to do, in their time, in their framework. For example, I'm an astrologer. Astrology is the art of time. It takes for me a lot. I'm a night chart. For me to wait out the Saturn hour and not write anything, not post anything. Okay? Just honoring Saturn by doing other things than broadcasting is very, very difficult. I'm a night chart. My malefic of chart is Mars. So it's, I think I do. I have an idea, I act on it. That's the good thing. With the Mars, with the Saturn, it's at least to wait out. So even if I can't do it in the best timing, at least I can eliminate the worst timing, and then I'm already better off. So as an astrologer, not every day is good for the schedules of work. Okay, we have electional astrology. And even if I can't, be like, shout out to Threads of Fate. Geshe will record on an election and then publish almost like a talisman. Fantastic. I'm not there. But at least I can do is to wait out the Saturn hour to take a step to improve upon my sense of timing and build my schedule a little bit better. Now, if you give the housing first, independent of ability to work, sounds like, oh my God, it's a lot of investment. That's investment in intelligence, because then the person will be able to provide coherent information. If they're dealing with no-touch torture, you better bet that the landlord will be dealing with that soon enough. If they were raped by a doctor, you better bet that's what they plan to do to the off-grid community. Now, comes an infiltrator to your land. They get housing first, independent of ability to work. They're an artist, you're gonna let them do art. The astrologer, you're gonna let them watch the sky. Now, who's going to be better for them? Those that rape them? Or those that provide the soil to heal and don't rape? Now, here is the thing. The number one thing for sovereignty is sexual sovereignty. There is no sovereignty without sexual sovereignty. And I want to talk about somebody that not everybody thinks about in that way, and this is the McAfee. Everybody say, oh my God, he beat the government, he beat the CIA. Fuck that. He was an Epstein. He bought this land, he bought this mansion, he bought this thing, did sex parties, this whatnot. All his girlfriends were teenagers, he raped all of them because that's statutory rape. And then he got disposed of. Of course, his estates would get looted. Salamat. That's the story and the trajectory of every Epstein. Now, I'm not judging McAfee, okay? If you watch Annika Lucas, episode 9, Alandra, he was supposed to be an Epstein. Sovereignty is also real estate. And this is the thing. When they do the rituals, when they bury, babies alive on the property. Now, people buy houses. Think about long-term rent. Think about perspective. There are going to be a lot of scams with real estate. Oh, we're going to build and so on. You feel the 80-20 funding rule, or all kinds of these projects. Okay? Now, normal family. Normal family. Thinks to buy a house. They save, they work, they this, they that, have the first installment, maybe the parents help, they buy a house. They don't know how to pay the mortgage and so on and so forth. They don't know that on the land where the house was built for the supposedly ritual of the project, a baby was buried alive. Now, the mother's gonna try to have babies. Either she's gonna have neurodivergent babies, or she's gonna have issues with having birth. Or they're gonna begin to fight. They're gonna, depending on what they did with the ritual. Because why do they want to separate the family? Child gets trafficked. If there is sacrificed, if the bloodline is like that, or elite sex trafficked, if the bloodline is like that. Now, you say elite sex trafficked. All of the business people were also elite sex trafficked. The Bilderbergen-Belsen, okay, is basically their mind control to have a sexual rapport that is built on rape and violence, and the alternations between that and tenderness to create trauma bond on a psychosexual level, and siphon one another's energy. Okay, now there's also the siphoning of the energy. Now, the wife that would try to siphon the energy or to traffic, and the husband to slavery. Nothing. Family worked hard, asked for the parents, and nobody will be able to diagnose Neptune. What's the reason? Neptune real estate. It's all the babies buried alive on the real estate, in the rituals, or underneath in the tunnels with Saturn, okay, ruling over Pluto. So the tunnels or underneath cities and so on, they are going to affect the energy of the people. Now, a family doesn't know what's happening, they don't think about it, and it's not something that they think to check. They will try to purify the property, purify this, purify that, and then things will go and unfold and unfold and unfold and unfold. Global pandemic, shit ton of Gen Zers, but they had money to buy a house. Okay, Gen Zers worked hard, got money to buy a house in cash. They try to look for property everywhere. They can't stay anywhere. Why? But the energy, they're so sensitive to the energy of the house. And they can't tell what it is. Of course, it is the babies that were buried alive. And what is the result of slavery? Think about modern slavery, the corporation. People got used to work a 9 to 5. 9 to 5 is meant to bankrupt the business. Okay? If a business is set on, there's the money laundering. What do we do with the money laundering? You pay for people, okay? You pay them with insurances, their housing, their meals, and so on and so forth. Then you drop the cap. Okay? Business bankrupt. Fantastic. You paid everything to the employees. Now, if you do it right, you pay everything to the employees, then business bankrupt. That's it. You declare bankruptcy. Who funded that? You're going to say public money, but no. Classified projects. It's funded by taxes, but its job is to de-job, de-house. Now, again, it's not the question is not what our opinion about taxation. If there is transparency to where the tax is going, and let's say tax is going for housing first independent of ability to work and to believe the patient and to abolish, to have hackers that counter no-touch torture. Fantastic, take 52% of my tax. Not if I get the ability to work and run a business and make a life while making a living, and I know, God forbid, something happens, I won't be dealing with torture, I won't be dealing with rape, I won't be dealing with trafficking, take 52% of my tax. But if that doesn't work, I would feel it harms my ability to work, harms my ability to run a business. Because I would do the shadow work, okay? The shadow work, like reconnect with good opinions about money and well-being, financial freedom, allow myself to receive, allow myself to rest, act on my dreams, be open and communicate uh, about what bothers me, and so on and so forth. All that there is left, okay, is for the world to accommodate. Now, sovereignty is Aries, is the I am. It's also identity. Without sexual sovereignty, there's no identity. In fact, those that want to enslave people, they rape them. Why? We say, oh, it's act of humiliation. None of that. They want mind control and people under power. Now, here's the thing: a free man did not oppress another. If you need to have slaves, you are not free. So, the more sexual sovereignty there is on the land, the more the land will sustain. And the more the projects will stand the test of time. Very simple. Let's say there is a war, people are running from the ghetto. A lady that lives in a cabin in the woods off grid, okay? She can't house you if you come to rape. Here's what the partisans did in Bulgaria. In Italy, they said my grandfather, but in Bulgaria, they raped people. I had a Bulgarian friend that couldn't hear Bella Ciao. I said, what happened? He said, no, it's a partisan song. The partisan saved my grandfather. Oh, I'm sorry to hear that, but here they raped people. My grandfather was sick with typhus, so he couldn't fight with partisans, and probably that typhus, because typhus is for prisoners and enslaved people. Basically, it is a disease that people catch when they are in imprisonment and incarceration. So that prevented him from going with the partisans. And then there was a lady that was offering him housing, and he was sick. So both he would, I don't know if he would rape her or not, but if he was not sick, but my grandfather, but I have to think, he was also a man at his 40s, and also she would not enslave him. And that's how, as a holistic health practitioner, this is how diseases are born. Okay. And if you're running away from somewhere and you're rapey, people can't smuggle you. And the only way they will smuggle you, now if you have land and there's rape on your land, okay, hopefully not by the landlord, but if that's something is going on the land, then there's always going to be a bigger devil. But how will you know that the devil is? How come people say, well, the devil come to that place but didn't stick around? If it got nothing to leech onto, it doesn't stick around. It may have things to loot, but there's another shout out that I want to have. And this guy has an off-grid in Canada. An off-grid property in Canada. Now they're attacking the off-grids right now, okay? And we need to think about airspace, because when it comes to chemtrails and all these things, protecting the airspace and airspace sovereignty. So this is Off Grid with Curtis Stone. History Meets Finance is a great channel. And Off Grid with Curtis Stone, he talks about the importance of not consenting, okay, not giving a signature, having other means of currency that are not registered. There is a dual thing when it comes to registry of births. I talked about the fact that the unregistered births are used for sacrifice. So okay, when it comes to registration, remember that nobody, absolutely nobody, can, nobody can tell you that your registration or your birth certificate means that you are a property of anything and anybody and any other body but you, yourself, and you. Okay? Human beings are not tradable under any circumstances. There is no law that can stand above this that is not the law of inversion, which is basically what people call the devil. Now, this also works in praxis. Somebody thinks they owe somebody, okay? as long as that is not implemented, it would be like an air of tolerance. It would be like there's something weird. Maybe I need to sage the place. Maybe I need to clear the energy. But then you clear the energy, then it reveals, oh, wait a second. That person thinks that they have right over me? That's what I needed to take out of the house. Let them have their own property, me have my own property. Wait a second. They trying to vote me out of human rights? Now, here's the thing. You try to enslave people, what happens? Fertile soil for recruitment. But without sexual sovereignty, nothing and no one is sovereign. So those who don't honor sexual sovereignty, it means they don't honor identity, and it means they don't have an I am, and they don't honor an I am. It means that they will never honor real estate and natural resources. What's the next conclusion? The most they can get is algorithms. Now, you say, oh, but why is there evil in the world and so on and so on? Like I said, the oil companies, we're running on oil and gas because if people would use free energy to light up a warehouse and enslave and traffic people there, then the lights off. Power abused dissolves. This is the theme we're going to see with Saturn Neptune. And you know, when you know your rights, when you know no one has any right over you, it means that if they try to violate, they have to use direct coercion, which means they're already committing crime against humanity and lost the mandate of the heaven. Now, I want to say another thing. Genghis Khan. I said this is going to be a Genghis Khan eclipse. And this is why I started to talk about cattle, because each and every one of us can decide they're going to look to whether the cheese they consume has been with cattle that was breeded by rape, okay, by the technology where they put something. Each and every one of us can change. Those that can change the milk and the coffee, okay. But here is the thing: those that I'm not talking about people that have no access. If you're in a homeless shelter and that coffee is okay, not what I'm talking about. I was myself in between houses. I ate meat, I ate cheese, I ate whatever. Okay, so that's not the issue here. But the issue here is this is one thing of the 12th, or fixing our bedroom. Okay, I cleaned my bedroom. Now it's a big mess. fixing one's bedroom, which is 12th house. Um, Sexual sovereignty is the number one thing. Making sure there's a way to treat the disabled, okay, the sick, and so on. Because the off-grids are going to have to become an alternative to a global slavery government. So they're going to need to be able to treat the sick. They're going to need to be able to protect the airspace. And they're going to need to be able to be more sexually sovereign than the alternative, way more sexually sovereign. Because here's the thing, it's not a slight bit of better type of rape. Okay, the thresholds are such. Why are well, a lot of people don't. There are a lot of types of neurodivergence that is the adaptation of the nervous system to slavery. Okay, where they kick the walls and so on. They go through no-touch torture. These are infants that go through no-touch torture. A baby wakes up in the middle of the night, starts screaming. Doesn't help grandmother. It's not an autistic child. They go through something. Okay, there is. Now, if they torture the child with no-touch torture, then they can access the identity and then they can do no-touch rape. Okay, it was a part of MK often. When they do that to a child, they basically get a mind-controlled child that later will be drugged. And the way we treat the disabled is, okay, the way people use disability as excuse to deprive people of sovereignty is exactly what will be done to the people upon invasion. So the most important thing is sexual sovereignty, because that's to do with the identity. It's also to do with the life energy, okay? They siphon the life energy, which is also connected to wealth and real estate. Okay, in modern society, we call that real estate. But it's basically the survivalistic needs. If what do you do when you have um, a mental breakdown? Okay, why did they tell you to go take a hike? There's the hiking guy in Oregon. Okay, they tell you to go take a hike. I'm taking a fucking hike for my fucking mental health. It's that guy. Why is it helpful? Okay, because it balances the nervous system. This is the problem with all the inorganic animals and all kind of experiments that they do. And I'm not against experimentation and so on, but we have to think about the fact that nature needs to balance our nervous system. Okay? Think about the fact that most of the food doesn't food anymore. Okay, if you take if once you had to eat a couple of fruits and you will have shit ton of nutrients that would be absorbed and so on. Then today you eat a tomato and you eat, you know, the tomatoes don't have lycopene. The garlic is not antiviral, antifungal, and so on. So again, those that are not sexually sovereign, are simply not sovereign. And it means even if they'll have real estate like Epstein, they will have a rise, boom. What's that boom? They're being disposed of and all the real estate looted. Now, some people will say they're gonna leave for the drugs and the. Okay? Yeah, Epstein did that. Epstein was tortured like. Okay, listen to Alandra. This is why number one is sexual sovereignty. Without that, you ain't got no land, you ain't got no house, you ain't got no nothing. And if you know that, you know, ain't nobody, because there are gonna be a lot of people that are gonna try to recruit here, intentional community here, this, that. If they don't grant you sexual sovereignty in spirit and in matter, your identity, your right over the land that you work, that you stay in, that you rest in, it means that you can't trust them, that they are a scam. Okay? And that scam is going to affect your health, going to affect your ability to work, going to affect the ability of your business to yield. And it means very likely that that person, to get that land, they had to rape a child, or they had to do something that violates the sexual sovereignty. There may be a buried alive baby that was buried on the property, which means that sets the entire tone into enslaving. Because they use the energy of that baby to build that real estate. Now, there is a shit ton of rivalries everywhere. Right now, the world is changing. The Centaurians are beginning to die from the previous century. And there's a shit ton of rivalries now. The shit ton of competition for each and every person. If they think in slavery and this and that, doesn't hold water. There's no offer. If they think to invest a shit ton of power to enslave, it's a treason cult. That extortion cult is fighting with that extortion cult. That exposes that. And the cover stories are always very interesting. A nurse in COVID that did not have shifts and became homeless at the COVID and works to open a patat chips. Okay? Tries to convince, and then another nurse that did not have shifts in COVID tries to convince person to open bank account in Germany and work for patat by Iranian in Netherlands. And yeah, she tells the people that she's working. She tells the people. Then another guy, every time a different suitcase with the KLM tag. Do you work? You looking for work? Now that shouts to him, "You're a rat!" Now who says rat? Who knows the word rat? Rat is mafia word. Three people in one shelter. That's three beds of people that actually would have no place to sleep. Now think about it, the mafia is sending people to live in a shelter. What kind of working conditions is that? And their job is to snitch, so the mafia will later dispose of them. It's not if the government is hiring three agents to surround a shelter that barely has place for people, then one agent that comes to visit every now and then makes sense. Three people occupying beds sleeping in the shelter that's supposed to be for homeless people. Are these people homeless? Wait, that's their working conditions. So again, people that don't grant sexual sovereignty, they don't have sexual sovereignty in their working environment, housing environment, hospitality environment, okay? And even jail. And as community, you're gonna have to figure out what happens if someone and you're gonna have to take no-touch torture into account. Because the people are going to be on your land with no-touch torture, and then you see a person committing offense, but you don't see that they are tortured. I had a no-touch torture when I was in Netherlands. There was and they're alternating between phases. And it's not coming from the government of Netherlands because it started in Israel. Okay, I escaped Israel. In the Netherlands, I had a shelter. But, okay, and that's important. Not. Now let's talk a little bit about chart of Paul Dubrov. Pavel Dubrov. Paul. Probably it would be Englified to Paul. I was not that wrong. Yes, it would. If he was in indigenous community in the United States or in Canada, it would turn into Paul. Pavel Durov. That's the guy that made Telegram. So one thing I like about it is finally a moon that seems to not be in karmic rope with my moon. Uh, this is good. We have another Aries moon brother. My D9 has Aries moon tropically, I think, and which is the chart we grow into after 36. And I ran into so many Aries moons since. And my Mercury there, so Chiron would be going still around a degree away from his moon again. Aries pretty much still conjoining. This is still the full moon day, probably. And the Sun and Mercury are 17 degrees Libra. You really want to watch the episode about him that let me show you which it's called Black Files, the man who outsmarted every agency. No, that's not the one. That's the Okafi one. Black Files, um, the man who outsmarted every government. Okay. Now here they talk about Okafi has outsmarted every agency. No, he did not. Suffice to say, and I'll keep it at that. And also, when we talk about sexual sovereignty, housing first, and so on, we know it's a strategic. Finland used that to combat the KGB. They treated psychosis with housing first and believe in the patient. That's. And then they joined NATO because I don't know what they found. So. But then, if Putin does that in Russia, no one will be able to threaten Putin, even from the Bolshevik Revolution. And yeah, because he has Chiron, I think, either in the third or the fourth house, and he did the infrastructure. People talk a lot about the infrastructure. They love the infrastructure in Russia, and they love Putin for that, because he was the one that improved the infrastructure in Russia. Now, one more thing is housing first, and the 12th house has to do also with hospitals and mental hospitals, particularly the mental state. And to do intelligence, not by rape. Okay, so sexual sovereignty. Then he could get Finland to be working. It would be competition because right now NATO is still with this MK Ultra. Now, if NATO does it first, then they could get the people of Russia coming to them. Okay, for example, in Ukraine, Crimea, the Jews in Crimea